start, Anna?
Sure. Um, so we're going to start with step one, which is focus on the right problem. And we're just going to put a little note on that. Even though these are called steps, it doesn't mean that they need to be taken in order. This also brings us awareness of the linearity that we've been conditioned with, that two comes after one, and so on. So let's just take that with a grain of salt and understand that this is a um, explorative experience, and the insight that comes from wisdom comes from within, from our whole being, not just from our memory or from our brain. So we're going to learn throughout this book that there's different ways to look at life, at a situation, um, at your children, at ourselves, right? So we're going to start with focus on the right problem. So there's a few ways, and we will each try to put an insightful way of how we look at it, so that you can see that even between us three, we have different kind of angles at looking at a situation. So I think I would share what it was like for me to awaken to this focus on the right problem. Like, now looking in retrospect, I had a very outward linear view of life. Like, I did not have an introspective way of being reflective or introspecting. So that was a skill that I needed to learn from an awakening moment. So it didn't come nicely, let's say, right? With this, like, oh, what's this about? It did not come like that. It came from my reactivity. It came from this level of anger that I was feeling. I kept getting triggered and triggered and triggered. And it was like on a weekly basis. And I knew better than to react on my kid, but I would react on my husband, and we would have these recurring fights. It was like weekend on end, just in the same loop. It was so annoying. And after some time, long time, like the first few years of my child's life, I would say, it got to a point where I got to that um, finish line where I was like, okay, this is not okay. My husband would always say this to me: I can't do this anymore. This is not okay. This is not okay. And then it would trigger me some more. And then it would activate me some more. And because I'm an outward expressive person, fighting comes outwardly to me. So I put it all out there. Well, for him, it's the opposite. He's like, no, we're not going to do this. So that conflict was enough to finally get to a point where I was like, I don't know what it is, but yes, it's not okay. This is not okay to live like this. And so from there, it was a journey into learning this skill of introspection. And it was hard to admit. I think that's the hardest part, right? To admit that there's some parts that we don't understand, or there's some things that we do faulty, or there's that we have a part of the co-creation of the conflict. Um, and so this is why we're here to do this book, to travel with it together with you as guides, so that we can help support you as you learn, and as your being gets activated. And it is a constant state of confusion, I feel like, in the beginning. So if there's parents that have started on their journey, then they already speak the language a little bit, and they know how hard it is. And they have a good way of getting through those hard moments. But for the ones that maybe don't know, like I was in a moment of like, okay, so something's wrong, but what do I do? Then we're here for that too. And we're gonna learn what it means to look for the right problem. So I don't want to take too much time on my part, but to wrap it up, I would say that there's many ways to look at a situation. So um, just like a story has two truths, right? When something happens, there's two stories from each person. Every situation has different angles. And when you explore and go around and look at it from all these angles, then your being will start to understand the truth of it.
Yeah, I agree. The first thing that comes to my mind is that we take the identity of being a parent very seriously. And I think it's culturally communicated to us that we need to raise that perfect child. And in trying to raise that perfect child, like we put so much pressure on ourselves and on our children that sometimes we forget to understand that a child is just being a child. And because we are so focused on our idea of getting it right, that anything that child does, which a child is doing because they're a child, their brains are not matured enough yet, and they're exploring and learning. They've just come into this world and they're joyful, they're curious, but it's not meeting our agenda of perfection. That sometimes we kind of, in that expectation of how, like for me, how I thought my child should behave, got in conflict with my child being a child. So when I started awakening, I started understanding that I was focusing on the right thing. I was looking at my child's behavior and trying to alter the behavior, not understanding what lies underneath, and also not understanding that my expectations of my child, like I never questioned myself whether my expectations for my child were age appropriate, or if there are any other factors affecting the behavior of my child. I was just so focused on my child delivering what I expected them to deliver. So that's another focus, another area that we need to explore. You know, when we are parenting our child, we all love our children and we want the best for them, but are our expectations of them, one, age appropriate? Do we understand, you
AI
know?
is with you.
Oh, do we understand what's driving their behavior? We need to deal with what's underneath the behavior, not the behavior itself. So if they're yelling, if they're throwing tantrums, if they are not behaving, if they are not listening to you, if they are hooked onto their screens, what's the underlying need that is not being met? And if we start focusing on those things, I think we can start connecting more with where our children are at and not the level that we expect them to be at.
So true.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think when we embark on this journey of awakening, because that's what it is, it's important to do so with to be able to open our minds and our hearts, because that is what leads to connection. And like Anna said, it's about looking, when we begin this journey, it's about looking at different perspectives, which then allows you to see the full horizon, because you see things from different points of view, but at the same time you're also able to do that form of introspection, and that is where the awareness lies. And so understanding and creating awareness of what is the problem, or what we need to focus on in this moment, is the first step of consciousness. It's like how do I say, when, for example, when your kid is acting out, and we can look at it as seeing it as the tip of the iceberg. We're only seeing the tip. We are not really seeing what is really going on within them. We are not really seeing what is underneath, and underneath the water surface. We only seeing what's above the surface. We are not looking beneath it. And this is what it allows us to do, is to look deeper and to understand what's hidden underneath, and ask ourselves what's really going on here, what's really showing up within us. And this will help us then understand that how we now are able to see what's showing up within us, and then how can we relate to our children, and how can this transform. This is what transforms us from going into that frustration state, and into which opens then the gateways to looking at a situation from more clarity and more connection. Yeah, there was something else that I wanted to say, but I think the first step allows us to shift our perspective, to see then what is beyond the immediate chaos of the outside world, and to not get so stuck on, like what I'm said, on specific things, on things that are on the surface, and to then just touch the true essence of yourself and of our relationship with our children. So you realize that the true challenge in parenting often isn't what's right in front of us. It's not that, so to say, the homework that's not done. It's not the bedtime struggles, or even the moments where the child is so is being defiant. They're just being who it is they truly are. And I think when we're able to change our perspective and introspect and understand that the real, problem, not really a problem, but yes, the real problem lies beneath that surface of the struggles. And this step now invites us to be able to shift our focus for what we think is the problem, to being curious and discovering, okay, what's showing up, and now what is the actual problem? What really should we focus on? And yeah, I think.
Yeah. Anna, do you want to talk about the HALT?
Yeah. Yeah, so HALT is an acronym that Daniel Siegel came up with to help as a kind of quick solution, right? It's the how to do it. So HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and sad. So when your kid is not all there like you like them to be, and you can tell something is up, instead of, assuming what's going on or letting it trigger you, because that's what happens usually. We don't like them to be sad or, out of their joyful moments, especially if they're little. So we get activated, and then that activates the fixer in us or the fighter or something to control that situation. So you can have this and post it on your fridge. And I use it with Magnus. I've used it since he was little. He knows it by heart. It's part of his life. It's as if it's everybody has it. And he asks me too. When I come home from work and I'm disconnected, he pulls out the paper. We have one. It's like all sun bleached sitting on the counter. And he's like, Mommy, are you halty? So he asks me, because if we're hungry or angry about something or lonely, especially for kids, if they had a lonely day at school, then of course they're reactive. So you can investigate and kind of discover what's happening, and then you go right for it. You go with compassion. You say, oh, you know, because kids go like this. You say hungry and they just look at you, and then you say angry and they look at you, and then you say lonely and they go, and then you know they have an instant reaction to the truth, right? So then you know what to do. That's a stepping stone, of using these kinds of tools. These are tools and instruments that we can use. And I recommend taking one and give it a try for a while, because and I know for myself, have the tendency to gather all the tools, and then I have so many that none of them come to mind when I'm in the moment. So give it some time to see if that actually works for you. So yeah, we want to keep these videos short, but we also want to hear from you. Leave us a comment with more questions, or if you feel like you want to hear more or less, or, you know, we would love a little bit of feedback from you guys so we know how to best put these lives out there so that they're helpful for people. So
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, same time.
thank
Thanks all.
Thank
you
you.
guys. Bye.
Bye.